So it's been a minute since I've introduced myself and what Elevated Aura is all about. And if you have been here for a while, you know that I'm constantly growing and changing. So for those of you who have stuck by my side, grateful doesn't sound like a strong enough word. I genuinely appreciate every single one of you. But for those of you who have recently started following my work because of my astrological updates, I wanted to share a little bit more of my background with you, especially since my free month-long self-love challenge starts February 1st. And I've gotten a few questions from people like, what exactly does astrology have to do with self-love? So my name is Katie. I spent nearly 30 years of my life feeling like I was not good enough, not worthy of basic respect or decency, even by my family of origin, meaning my parents and my siblings. In truth, I grew up surrounded by wounded adults who chose a victim mentality, who chose to protect sexual abusers over their own children, and really continue a pattern of generational trauma, emotional abuse, emotional immaturity, and toxic family roles. In 2019, I was 28. I had been married for roughly 60 days, and I had a life-changing traumatic experience. Now, it turns out that I was also going through my Saturn return, my dark night of the soul. And for those of you who speak astrology, I have Saturn in my 12th house, ruled by Capricorn, which for me meant that my Saturn return was deeply powerful, transformative. And because it happened when Uranus had entered Taurus, a sign that rules my fourth house of home and is where my sun, moon, Mercury, and dominant goddess asteroid Pallas Athena lives, I felt the quantum leaps and losses profoundly. Now, it was at this time that I found myself at a crossroads with a guaranteed loss. My family of origin wanted me to leave my husband. They made heartbreaking and puzzling claims about my new marriage and relationship, about my mental health and well being, my use of drugs and alcohol. And they tried to frame it as if they were concerned, as if they truly loved and cared about me. And they gave me an ultimatum: us or him. But the thing is, I did not enter into my marriage or relationship with my husband lightly. As much as I longed to be a part of a loving couple, I did not want to be with just anyone. I actually learned that pretty quickly dating in my early 20s. I had already dated the guy who seemed great on Instagram, but made me feel alone, insecure, ugly, flawed, like I was never enough. But my husband had never made me feel this way. He actually went the extra mile to make sure I knew how much he loved me, especially when we were dating long distance. Like surprise flower deliveries, morning text messages, goodnight phone calls, frequent trips to visit me because it was so much easier for him to travel and work remotely than it was for me. And I'll never forget the moment when I realized he loved me so much that it actually made me feel like it was okay for me to love myself, to show up and take care of myself, to have hobbies and to do things that brought me joy. And I actually remember that moment vividly. We were driving home from Jersey Mike's, and I was wearing sweatpants, no makeup. All we had really planned for the day was to eat sandwiches, watch a movie, and maybe go to the pool later. But it was in that moment I realized I felt safer to show up as my true, authentic self in my then boyfriend's presence than I did when I was alone. Because truthfully, before him, I would have most likely never gone and gotten a sandwich from Jersey Mike's. I had never had Jersey Mike's before him because my mom often made comments about sandwiches being like boy food, whatever that means. So already being like mid-sized and not petite like my sister or my mom was when she was younger, I felt like it wasn't safe to eat a sandwich if I ever wanted to be beautiful. And the comments that I had gotten about my body growing up were horrendous in hindsight. Now here I was going to get sandwiches on purpose with a wildly attractive man who found me beautiful in ways that I never imagined someone could love me. And on top of that, I struggled to leave my house without full makeup, a full like put together outfit unless I was going to work out because I felt that my worth was largely dependent on my external appearance and external validation. Now, in truth, I think a lot of us were taught that our worth was dependent on our external validation, which is why Miley Cyrus's new self-love anthem, Flowers, resonates with so many women in particular. But the amount of social anxiety that accompanied that amount of pressure to be perfect, to receive that external high so I could feel good about myself was incredibly taxing. And I would often just sit like frozen in my apartment watching Housewife reruns on Bravo because I didn't know how to live my life without someone telling me that what I was doing was okay. So this was more than a sandwich for lunch for me. I vividly remember driving down this tree-lined street, turning into our apartment parking lot. Like I can still feel the body high from that moment when I think about it. It's just, that's how powerful it was. And I started to wonder if these moments are what made a relationship worth fighting for, realizing that although I was complete, worthy, and enough on my own, it wasn't something that I saw or recognized in myself until someone loved me so much that it was impossible for me to ignore my lovability. It was impossible to ignore that I was enough just as I was, just as I am. I could eat a sandwich and still be beautiful. I could wear sweatpants, have messy hair, a face filled with blemishes, uneven spots, eczema, and still be beautiful. Because beauty is not a surface level thing. Think about the rainforest. There's small spiders, canopy trees, frogs, jaguars, cheetahs, snakes, and they're all required for the ecosystem to function. But we may not consider each one of those individual things beautiful on their own. But as a whole, they are beautiful because they add to the wholeness of the earth. They add a specific, unique flavor to the jungle. And that is so beautiful. And the same thing happens with the ocean. Can you imagine an ocean without sharks, whales, dolphins, seahorses, or kelp? I can't. So when my parents and siblings tried to tell me 2 months into my new marriage that it was actually toxic, that they had my best interest in mind, not him, without any examples, I felt like I had the wind knocked out of me. Like, surely they had to be joking. Not only had they stood by my side, as I said I do, not even 3 months ago, and pledged to be a supporter of my husband and I's marriage, but I had been a witness to the challenges in all of their relationships. I had been there at some of the darkest times for all of them. And in that darkness, I chose to help them remember the good times, the light, why they chose and love each other. But in this moment, when they gave me an ultimatum, it was not given with love. Ultimatums are never given with love. So I made a choice for months to keep what happened close to my chest. I didn't understand why I would want to bring other people into drama that I considered extremely embarrassing for my mother and sister in particular. Like, how could they make the claims that they were making, especially when they had zero issues loving and socializing with a known rapist, a child molester, a predator hanging around themselves, and little innocent children? Similarly, I was appalled at the lack of support I explicitly asked for from other family members. Those I've deemed the enablers are just as bad in my mind, which is how I found myself in this place of total estrangement from just about everyone I've ever known prior to 2019. It's been a process filled with a lot of grief, anger, and tears, but also euphoric levels of joy. I've improved my self-worth dramatically, and that has had a ripple effect on my financial health, mental health, emotional health, spiritual health, psychological health. Now, I started this journey living in an apartment I had originally rented and co-signed with my dad, but now I own a home with my husband, no co-signers. I'm a puppy mama. I've become a certified life coach, a spiritual breathwork practitioner, a sacred astrologer. I created my own business, Elevated Aura. We have a pool of our own, which was a lifelong dream of mine. I had the opportunity to redesign our kitchen from scratch in our home after a fluke water accident, which, by the way, like 95% of our kitchen remodel was covered by insurance. Like, my life is filled with magic and miracles on a daily basis. So while I do have moments where my heart aches over what happened with my family of origin, and I'm fully aware that my healing journey will be lifelong, I'm going to keep going with it, estrangement and all. It's a choice that I'm making because I've had a taste of what it's like to be completely madly in love with myself. I now know what it's like to let go of the victim mindset and embrace everything that has happened with gratitude, because it has led me to where I am now and has shaped me into the person that I am today, and I'm obsessed with her. Now, astrology and human design have similarly helped me learn unconditional love for myself by helping me understand how my energy operates, giving me permission to be myself and not try to become someone I'm not so that I can get a stamp of approval from someone else. And as I tap further into my highest self, the best version of me, I ask myself if she would be bothered or hung up on people who couldn't or wouldn't see her worth, like people who made her feel she was difficult to love. And most of the time, my highest self just laughs at that question because she's so unfazed by those who couldn't handle or appreciate the way that she sparkles that the question just seems silly. Now, of course, those people don't even register in her mind. And I would love to help you find that same level of self-love. So join me this February for a month-long self-love challenge. It's completely free. All you need to do is register at elevatedaura.com.